Okay, let's dive into a pretty wild digital detective story. We're going to talk about how one of the tiniest changes imaginable, a single database query, ended up triggering a massive, cascading failure that brought a huge chunk of the internet to its knees.
So picture this, a totally routine update. You know, the kind of thing that happens thousands of times a day without anyone even noticing. But on this particular day, that one tiny, seemingly harmless action, well, it set off a global outage. This is the story of how it all went down.
And just like that, boom. All over the world, people trying to get to their favorite websites, their work apps, they're just seeing error pages. For a lot of people, the internet basically just broke.
And here you can see the exact moment it all went wrong. At 11:20 UTC, there was this catastrophic surge in what are called 5x errors. These are basically the server screaming, "I have a huge problem." Look at that chart. The network went from totally fine to a complete disaster in literally minutes.
So you and I, we're just seeing this boring error page, right? But behind the curtain, it was absolute chaos. An all-hands-on-deck emergency. Engineers were scrambling, trying to figure out what on earth could cause a failure this big, this fast.
All right, so let's follow the engineers as they start trying to solve this thing. They're following these digital breadcrumbs, but as you'll see, the trail was super confusing and full of misdirection.
I mean, think about it. The whole network goes down at once. With all the high-profile attacks happening lately, the first thing on everyone's mind was, this has to be an attack, right? It just had all the signs.
But here's the twist. It looked just like a big, bad attack from the outside. But the real problem, it was coming from inside the house. This wasn't some hacker group. This was a self-inflicted wound.
Okay, and this is what made the problem a total nightmare to diagnose. The network would completely fail, and then, just like magic, it would recover. And then, like clockwork, 5 minutes later, it would fail all over again. This weird on-again, off-again cycle, it was a massive red herring that sent the engineers down completely the wrong path for a while.
So now we get to the heart of it. This is where we trace this huge global outage all the way back to a single microscopic trigger. It's a classic case of the domino effect, but on a digital, internet-wide scale.
Okay, so here's exactly how the dominoes fell. It all started with a simple permission change on a database. Super routine stuff. But that little change caused a query, a request for data, to accidentally pull back duplicate information. Now, this duplicate data gets stuffed into a critical configuration file which suddenly doubles in size. The core system tries to load this new, giant file, but it runs out of memory. It just wasn't built for that. And it panics. That panic is what triggered the errors we saw all across the world.
So you're probably asking, what the heck is a feature file? Well, think of it as a rulebook for a machine learning model. Its job is to spot malicious bots. And to be effective, this rulebook has to be updated every few minutes with the latest threats. That's why its size and its accuracy are so important.
And this number, 200, this is the magic number that broke everything. It's the system's Achilles heel. See, to make things run really fast, the system was designed to handle a maximum of 200 of these features, and it set aside just enough memory for that. On a normal day, the file only had about 60. But that bad file, the bloated one, it had more than 200. The system just slammed into that hard limit and had no idea what to do. It just crashed.
And this right here, this table is the smoking gun. Remember that permission change? Because of that, a query that was only supposed to look at the default database suddenly started grabbing data from another one, the R0 database, at the same time. You can see it clear as day. The same features listed twice. This is the exact moment the duplication happened, the tiny crack that caused the whole dam to break.
Okay, so they found the cause. Now it's a frantic race against the clock to fix it and bring the internet back online. The pressure on these engineers must have been immense.
And they moved incredibly fast. First, at 13:05, they did some triage, bypassing key services to stop the bleeding. Then, a little over an hour later, they managed to stop that bad file from spreading. And check this out, just 6 minutes after that, they rolled out a known good version of the file to the entire global network. By 17:06, after a few more hours of making sure everything was stable, it was all over. Systems fully restored.
But the damage wasn't just to one system. It had this huge ripple effect. That core failure took down user authentication, which means you couldn't log into services. It broke key developer tools. Think of them as simple, fast databases. It even knocked out the company's own dashboard, so customers couldn't even log in to tell them something was wrong. A real catch-22.
So, after the dust settles, what do you take away from a failure this big? Let's get into the lessons learned and how they plan to make sure this kind of thing never, ever happens again.
There was no sugarcoating it. The CEO, Matthew Prince, was incredibly direct, saying, "An outage like today is unacceptable. We know we let you down today." That quote really shows you how seriously they took this failure and their responsibility for it.
So they immediately got to work on some very concrete fixes. First, they're now treating their own internal configuration files with a lot more suspicion, almost like they could be malicious. They're also building better kill switches, big red emergency stop buttons to quickly shut down a failing part of the system. And finally, they're going through all their core systems with a fine-tooth comb, hunting for any other hidden weak spots just like this one.
And this really brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? This whole incident is just a powerful, humbling reminder of how complex and frankly how fragile these massive systems we rely on every single day really are. It makes you wonder, in a world where one single tiny database query can knock the internet offline, how do we even begin to build a truly resilient system?